This is Roxy, and this is a long story, so buckle up, Buttercup. so, so I'm starting off by telling you the basic histories of each of my planets, because there are 10 of them, and there's a lot going on all of them, and they're all kind of crazy. So I started off by telling you the story of Corsica. No, sorry. I still told you the story of Cosmos, not Corsica. Corsica's not for a while. We'll get there. So, the one that we want to do next would be the Trebek, because the Trebek is the next in the group of planets that I have. It is sequentially the next planet. So to tell you about Trebek, we have to go back to Corsica. Keep saying Corsica. We have to go back to Cosmos. This is the part of Cosmos who they've forgotten this part of their history. They don't know that this part of their history exists. Except for a very, very few. And they even only remember some bits of it. But in the history of Cosmos, there was a time in which all the superpowered people vastly outnumbered the unsuperpowered. And they were just destroying the planet in huge epic battles, one-upping each other in the next huge epic battle the next week, to the point where all of the continents of Cosmos were so damaged that they no longer look the same as they did before everyone had superpowers. So they altered the utter geology of their planet with their battles and their fights and their global ending destruction. Until, I guess we decided his name was Mark. Until Mark was able to convince one of the immortals to, well, the only immortal, to help him out and convince the world that they should just get out of town. They've caused enough trouble. They need to book it. And so they made the Trebek. They made the Trebek out of metals they mined from the local asteroid belt. So they weren't taking any more resources from the planet than they needed to. The Trebek itself is both a feat of engineering, and the workforce was pretty much all superpowered people. So, how do you get this metal hot enough to break down the ores in it and purify it and all that wonderful stuff? Well, you got a guy that can melt whole mountains with his hands. So the work becomes a bit easier when you have somebody just packing that much of a punch. I'm sewing my shorts. Aren't they so pretty? Anyways, the Trebek. So the Trebek has a huge amount of superpowered people on it, and they are run pretty much by Mark, the immortal, and their few friends that are actually immune to Mark's superpower of persuasion. And to their credit, they have great altruistic motives. They want to save their world, even if it is from them, and even if it means great personal sacrifice of not getting to have a home. And because Mark can convince anybody of anything, he's convinced an entire generation of superheroes or superpowered people or supervillains to follow him out into the space on a spaceship that they made with their own hands. And yeah, so it doesn't take too long, maybe even within one generation, for the ravages of space to really mess with their biology, as far as zero grav's effect on spinal cord development and bone density, muscle density, all that sort of stuff is felt in the first generation. but it gets worse and worse as the generations go, until they have a certain um, one girl who has superpowers. She thinks she's a dud because her superpowers don't express as openly and amazingly as everybody else's. But her superpower is actually that she makes people better. Um, she's fixing their DNA and like morphing their DNA just by being in contact with her, breathing the same air as her, being around her. She basically makes the world a better place by being there. But like according to her, she doesn't really have any special abilities or talents or anything special about her. She doesn't have any superpowers. She doesn't like and so it's kind of a chip on her shoulder for the longest time until she figures out that that's her power, is that she's actually making everybody not succumb to like the ravages of space and weightlessness and all this other stuff. So she's constantly fixing their DNA and helping them adapt to zero grav, adapt to space radiation, solar flares, all the different kinds of stuff that you would be utterly ended by in space, even with the best of a multi-generational spaceship. But theirs isn't the best multi-generational spaceship, it's the first. So, pioneers all around. Um, so, but in time, she finds out how to manipulate her own genome so she can effectively completely stop the aging process of her own body, or she can reverse it. And she tends to reverse it. Let's give her a name. Ami. We're gonna name her Ami. A-M-I. So Ami is able to change her genes as she goes, where she can, she tends to just let herself age to a certain point and then, unage. And grow backwards. She grows forwards and then she grows backwards. But each time she alters her genes just a little bit so she doesn't look entirely like the same person over and over again. And part of the reasoning for this is that she wants to be able to track how many times she's aged to the point of like probably she should die now, and then come back from aging. And so Ami, Mark, the Immortal, the senior crew, which is like the senior crew includes the Immortal and Mark. And each of them are kind of in charge of a certain way to keep the ship going. Whether it is through population, whether it's through just keeping them going as far as like the engines, the mechanisms that make them go, the interpersonal relationships, so that they don't go absolutely insane out in the void of space. So like they're each in charge of a different aspect of space travel that'll help them all survive it until they can come to a homeland of some kind. And they're not even 100% sure that they're going to ever find another planet like their home world, but they don't really let that bother them, or really let the people know that that's what's bothering them, because of the fact that they don't want everybody to freak out that they're never going to be able to set foot on another planet again. They're more like, oh no, it'll take a couple of generations, so maybe not your kids, but your like great grandkids will finally have the homeland, and people are willing to sacrifice and do a lot of things for the sake for their sake, for the sake of their next generation, their next generation, their great grand generations. Um, they're willing to sacrifice to give them a better life. And even if it means they have to stay out in space for a good long while before even the idea is pitched that they'll go back to their own world, back to cosmos once it's healed. But as generations wane on and on and on, everybody just kind of gets used to living on the ship. Which is a good thing and a bad thing, because they get used to it, and they marry, they have children, and their children have children, and their children's children, and then you have a population issue. So, because the population is getting as big as it is, they need a place to kind of park the Trebek, and start building on the outer hull of the Trebek, expanding an atmosphere around the Trebek, and building outside of the ship so as to house all the people that they are now in very, very cramped positions. And they also, like, if they have more space, they can find a way to science their way into having more resources to help feed everybody and clothe everybody and all that sort of thing. And so what they do So that's what they do. They find a solar system that is similar enough to home, looks enough like home, because everybody gravitates towards home. And the only ones that really know what home even looked like are like the Immortals, Amy, Mark, the rest of the senior crew. Oh, quick aside, the reason why the rest of the senior crew has lived, even though they are not, and their power set has nothing to do with immortality. The whole reason why they've survived this long is because of the Immortal. Now, the Immortal has decided that he's tired of living alone, like he was out in the mountains, and he decided to help them save, like, people. And he's like, okay. But here's the thing. I have gotten attached to you guys now, and I don't want to lose more of my friends, my family, my loved ones, because I've already done that. I've done that for centuries. That's why I was living up in the mountains, because I was really tired of everyone stinking dying on me. And so in my time in the mountains, I learned a little trick to help others live longer. And now you are all immortal too. Not because you have the power set for it, but because I am sharing my immortality with you. And you don't get a choice in this, because I don't want you to die and leave me alone again. So, the rest of the senior crew of the Trebek are immortal specifically because their immortal friend doesn't want to be alone anymore. So, cute guy. Poor guy. You think living forever would be a treat, but it's not after a while. And he's just living proof of that. Poor guy. So, Amy, on the other hand, so Amy's like third or fourth generation of a Trebek person. And, doesn't know Earth, doesn't know Cosmos, never knew what it was like to live on Cosmos. So, doesn't have the same sort of stuff going on as the senior crew. Can't really relate. But, the senior crews just trust us, this is the best place to park our little spaceship, and everybody does trust them, because they have Mark, and Mark can convince anybody of anything. And so they all just kind of like, yeah, okay, sure, sounds good. We'll believe you. And they have the added benefit now of, like, we are older and wiser than all of you, because we were around before your grandparents. So you also have that fun little detail. So, they park themselves at this particular solar system, and they build atmosphere around the Trebek, and they build city on top and on the bottom of the Trebek. Oh, so the Trebek has like a gravity plate right through the middle of the ship. And so, like, everybody on this side of the gravity plate walks like this, everybody on this side walks like that. So, when they build the city, they build the city up this way and they build the city down this way. And, it's all held together by the same gravity plate that they have to beef up as they build, because that would become a problem eventually if they didn't. So the Trebek is fine being a double-headed city floating around a sun until that population gets too big, and they're like, well, we have to expand even more. Luckily, this particular solar system also has an asteroid belt, and so the Trebek, they decide that what they're going to do is kind of just pull over a couple of really big asteroids, and a good size, a good amount of them, and then we're going to get some good atmosphere bubbles around them, and then we're going to terraform them, and there you go, you have your own little mini planet with an atmosphere, and everything's hunky-dory. So around this time, they have to beef up what they call their, along with the gravity plate, there's a electromagnetic generator, and it makes the entire. So without an electromagnetic field, any planet in any solar system is going to be utterly ravaged by space radiation and by solar winds. So in order to combat that, while they were floating through space, they had to figure out, even before they floated through space, the Trebek had to have a electromagnetic generator. And so they've had to upgrade this electromagnetic generator, because there's literally no other way that they would survive. They would not be able to survive the solar winds or the space radiation without something. It's a bit like a deflector shell that just deflects all the harmful radiation, all the harmful solar rays, everything that's going to completely just decimate their world, their ship, their now ship planet thing. So they had to beef up their electromagnetic field when they were building on either side of the Trebek. But for the asteroids themselves, they have to build in an electromagnetic generator, just like a huge one on the surface, to cover each individual asteroid. And it's one of the first things that they have to do. So based on the placement of the electromagnetic generator and like where it is on the planet determines, or where it is on the asteroid determines where that asteroid is among all the other asteroids. And that way, combined, they each are generating their own electromagnetic field, and it's building on each other, and so it's deflecting off of the entire mass. So, how many is the issue that I keep running into? And I'll just make up a strange number and then like have to stick to it. So I'm gonna say 78 asteroids. They finally compile all together. So 78 asteroids. That's what we're sticking with. And so 78 asteroids, and it's not all at once. It's built over time. They add one, and then that one gets full, and they add another, and they add another, and they, as each asteroid gets full of the population of the people from the Trebek, they build another asteroid planet, until, so this becomes kind of the hub of people that, they slowly start losing their powers. But they also start inventing new sciences and just figuring out how to live out and terraform asteroids, and just all this crazy, it's a crazy amount of like pseudoscience that I'm dealing with here, guys. Like, I'm not smart enough to actually come up with any of this stuff, but I have cool ideas. Anyways, so they science their way through a whole lot of mess to get these asteroids to actually function as planets that they can live on. And because they're doing that, they are able to advance and build more, and each of these asteroids that have a bubble of atmosphere around them, the atmosphere around them is the ozone, on our planet it would be the ozone layer, but they don't have ozone layers. They have basically like plastic wrap. So they're each like in a little balloon. Each asteroid's in a little balloon of oxygen, of hydrogen, of all the atmosphere. And literally these little balloons are connected by little tubes to the other balloons. And so that they can share oxygen, share all that. So they're kind of, the Trebek ends up looking like a double-headed city in one big bubble, and then it's surrounded by a bunch of little asteroid planets that are all connected by tubes, and it looks a bit like a hamster village, okay? Just like all these tubes leading all these places, and everything there's a little bit nuts because of this, because if you think of living on Trebek, whether you're living inside of the Trebek or on the surface of Trebek, it is light all the time and warm all the time. And so like seasons don't really exist anymore for people on the Trebek itself. But on the outlining asteroids, seasons most definitely exist. And in fact, things are kind of weird and wacky even on a daily basis. Because with the Trebek, night and day, you can, once you have that many asteroids strung around your giant city, they're going to block out some of the natural sunlight that you are dealing with or trying to deal with and have as a supply of light. And so you guys kind of make your own light. Now, what that does with the planets is in a single day they have twilight and day. Because if each individual asteroid spins on an axis for a day-night schedule, on one part they're facing the natural sun, and so it's day. And then when they turn, they get almost to darkness, and then they turn again, and now they're facing the Trebek, which is radiating light all the time too. So you have them on one, like, because the Trebek itself also has a rotation, and it has a spin, and it revolves around the sun. Okay, so each of them, they spin. Each asteroid spins facing the sun and then facing the Trebek, and on the two sides where it's not where the landmass isn't facing the sun or the Trebek is like their twilight, so that's as dark as it gets, but only for half the year, because the other half of the year they're on the other side of the Trebek, because just like the Trebek is always spinning, it has its own independent spin. Oh, I don't know how this works then, because if they're all connected with tubes, it's going to get them so tangled if the spin of the Trebek is different than the spin of each planet. So each of the planet inside of their atmosphere has a spin. So they're not twisting up chords like that. And as for the spin of the Trebek, I think they're going to have to halt it. And instead mix it up where it's like the spin of the whole mass, not just the ship itself, or maybe just the ship itself and its bubble is spinning. And so that way the only thing that they have to worry about is the rotation Okay, that's how it's going to work. Okay, the Trebek itself has an axis that it spins on, so it has or had a day-night schedule, but now it's just a timer basically where they turn on and off the lights for a day-night simulation. Um, the individual asteroid planets, they have a spin as well. They spin, and they have a day and twilight schedule for half the year. But as they go around in the orbit around the sun, um, so like it starts like this, it goes around the sun like, okay, so here's the sun. There they start like this, they go around. So when they're like this, the part that was facing the sun is now facing away from the sun, straight into the night. In which case they have a normal like day night schedule, but their nights are significantly more cold, especially the further you are from the Trebek. And their days are really cold too, the further they are from the Trebek. So, depending on how close they are to Trebek or how far away they are from the Trebek, determines their climate, their temperature, if they're tropical, or if they're desert, or if they are freezing tundra all of the time. Well, not all of the time, but at least half the year. And so some of the asteroids do find, especially the earlier asteroids, they do find they're more temperate regions, they're more like tropical or even desert regions where they don't have as hard of a time with extreme colds. But as they go on and build more and more asteroids, the further these asteroids are from the Trebek, the spaceship Trebek, or the capital, as they start calling it, because it's kind of the central hub of everything. The further they are from it, the colder it is. And, yeah, so it's a fun time. So yearly schedules are kind of weird and crazy, but the Trebek becomes kind of the capital of all the planets. It becomes almost the new mother planet because everybody else comes from them, although they all came from Cosmos. Everything after Cosmos comes from Trebek. And so Trebek ends up being kind of the mediator between planets. They always send delegates to kind of hash out details, trade routes, negotiate peace, negotiate war, all this kind of stuff. They go back to the Trebek for. And so the Trebek is also where like the hub of science comes from, where they all come from the Trebek, and they are the ones that start building other planets. So, what else about the Trebek? Oh, as years go on, the senior crew of the Trebek, because they get to live forever, they kind of start embodying the whole idea of you live long enough, you become the monsters that you fight and that you tried to fight in your youth, right? But they are so much worse. They basically, after a while, start patterning themselves after the Greek gods, and they are gosh awful people. They decide to each of them adopts a single planet, an asteroid planet, as theirs. And it just becomes their jurisdiction, and they're in charge of it. And they do whatever they want with this planet and the people on it. And this is very awful. This is actually where at some point, I'm fooling around with the idea of creating, like, adventures, like, kind of, fantasy adventures with fantasy species and races and such. And this is where they happen, is on these, I think it's 8 worlds of the Trebek, 8 asteroid worlds of the Trebek that get adopted by the immortals. Let's see. Yeah. There's 8 of them. And as for Amy, she is completely unaware of them and their shenanigans because she is busy doing all the other stuff. And by all the other stuff, as I said before, all the peace treaties and war treaties and trade treaties and all the other stuff, helping the scientists develop new ways to make new planets. She's the one that's kind of been slung to that job because the rest of them have gotten kind of bored of leading in any good, righteous way. They have decided they're instead just going to be tyrants of their little tiny corners or their little tiny asteroid planets. And they kind of cut off those 8 asteroid planets from all the other planets, and they only intermingle with each other now and deal with each other now. And this is kind of so lately I've been reading a lot of comics that are kind of the isekai genre, so it's just like after a while of reading like office worker girl gets hit by a truck and now is fantasy princess, fantasy villain, fantasy dragon, office worker man is suddenly Duke of the North. What the heck? After so many of those, you start kind of wondering if there's some sort of like higher deity, just like they're out there just like trading people like a Pokemon trading cards, just like, yo, do you got a Charizard? Like, hey, I'll trade you your office worker for my knight in shining armor. I'll trade you your salary girl for a ancient mage. So fun, cute times. But yeah, that's what they end up being. The senior crew that end up deciding that they're immortals and untouchable and can do whatever they want now because they've paid their dues and lived their life righteously. So now they get to have their fun and no one can tell them anything because they're old and they just want to have fun now. And things are pretty stable. There's plenty of planets to go around. There's plenty of, because after the asteroids, that's when the planet making really kicks off, and there's a lot of different ways that planets get made. And I'll go into each of those ways as I discuss each of the planets that get made. But so these guys are like, well, we've done it all. We're good. We're tired. Let us have our retirement. And their retirement is unfortunately torturing a lot of people. So it does not last forever. But yeah, that's the kind of storyline that they decide to have, is that, oh yeah, well, you don't know, kid. Once you get to be my age, and Amy, Lord love her, she is kind of the antithesis of that argument, because she's like, truly, you've only lived maybe a generation more than me. There is no reason for you to act like this. There is no reason for you to treat people like this. You are just doing this because that's what's in your heart to do. And no, you don't have to become a monster once you reach a certain age. You don't have to become the thing that you hated and fought against in your youth. You don't have to be that. And, you are because you want to be. It's like you were tired of fighting the good fight, so you decided to be evil. That's not on me, that is on you. That is not time's fault. That's you. So that's the argument between the two of them, the two groups. Anything else interesting about the Trebek I should mention? Oh, well, that goes into other planets, but yeah. So that is the Trebek. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you next time. We'll talk about, well, either no, sorry, we already did Cosmos. Either Rafty or Kunan. Until then, bye. Have a good day.